So in the 60s, after Manning Johnson passed away, there was two domestic terrorist groups that rose. They were white groups. One was female and one was all gender. So the first group was the Weather Underground, a domestic terrorist group in the 60s. The other group was M19. One of the leaders of the Weather Underground is a man named Eric Mann. Patrisse Cullors says in an interview that Eric Mann was her mentor. She says that he created the organization called the Labor Community Strategy Center, which sounds very much like the type of organizations Manning Johnson lists in his book. She says it was her first political home. And basically that Eric Mann was her mentor. So when she was trained in being an organizer and a Marxist, she was trained by Eric Mann, one of the leaders of the domestic terrorist group, the Weathermen, a communist organization. All right. That's one connection to Black Lives Matter being backed or their elders being white communists.
But you must look beyond what you think race is. You must look beyond what you think black is to connect these dots.
All right, so when you want to donate to Black Lives Matter, you have to donate through a company or organization called Thousand Currents. Thousand Currents is the fundraising and fiscal sponsor for the Black Lives Matter global movement. The woman who she served as vice chair of the board of directors for Thousand Currents, was an active member of revolutionary left-wing movements whose illegal activities included bombing U.S. government buildings and committing armed robberies. So the person who sits on the board of the fundraising and fiscal sponsorship for Black Lives Matter was also a convicted domestic terrorist. And then the mentor of one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter was also a convicted domestic terrorist. They were all white communists. These are the people behind Black Lives Matter. So when you wonder why they move the way that they move, it's very simple. Just like Manning Johnson.
Black Lives Matter Global Network is not for black people at all. It's never been. So when they come out and say that they're only going to focus on black lives being taken by white police officers, that tells me everything. Because how can a black life matter if it doesn't matter, period?
In 2015, Black Lives Matter held an event in Harlem where they invited the dictator of Venezuela, the communist nation, Venezuela. They invited him to be honored in America in 2015.
So I want to just first off say thank you to the government of Venezuela and President Maduro. I really appreciate your participation in this event and your leadership.
The same year, a 14-year-old was killed during a protest in his country by the police. So during that time, the people were protesting this guy and they were being killed in the streets. But this is a time when the leaders of Black Lives Matter, an organization against police brutality, invites this man to the country to be honored. They call him a comrade. They consider him a brother and a friend.
See, the whole premise behind Black Lives Matter is a false one anyway, because it's really a plea to the power structure to say, please stop killing us. My only issue with that is I don't believe you can actually beg the people that are oppressing you, beg them for you to exist. Like, I'm not asking anybody for my right to exist. I'm not. So I don't even have to make the statement that Black Lives Matter, because I know that my life matters, period. Now, you all can throw black in front of it. Anytime you see black in front of something, it's owned by the white power structure. Anytime you see black in front of something, it's owned by the white power structure. There's no such thing as black leadership, because black leadership has to be endorsed by the white power structure. So everybody you see that's in a position of power, that's black in leadership, they've been placed there by the white power structure.
He even mentions the role of the media, which will sound particularly familiar to you, the viewer. Manning explains how the liberal left within media would go overboard in giving top news coverage to racial incidents, and also those incidents that are interpreted so as to show biased attitudes of whites against Negroes. Manning said,
"This is a propaganda hoax aimed at not helping the Negro, but casting America in a bad light in order to destroy prestige and influence abroad.
one of the other co-founders of Black Lives Matter. Her name is Opal Tometi. She visits Venezuela, and while there, she tweets out, this is a place of intelligent political discourse. A place of intelligent political discourse. That's a place where they killed their protesters, where the president literally gave them the authority to kill protesters, to use violence against protesters. So that part, the only thing those two people have in common, the only thing that Maduro, and his name is Nicolas Maduro, the dictator, the only thing that him and Black Lives Matter have in common is the fist of communism. That's why Black Lives Matter's logo is a black fist. The logo for communism is a red fist. It's the exact same thing. In 2018, I believe it was, Maduro's country had the they had the most police killings in the entire world. This is the person that they invited to America to be honored. Black Lives Matter.
The book even explains how black leaders looking to climb the ladder of success a little faster were used as frontmen to bait the black population to be led astray. In return for money and preferred treatment, these men became what Manning refers to as race leaders. And as the race leaders rose, the book continues to explain how white leftists descended on Negro communities like locusts, posing as friends come to help liberate their black brothers. They may no longer refer to themselves as the Red Army, but the actions being taken now and then are uncanny. Two different eras in time, the same agenda remains.
So there is no such thing as black leadership. So anything you see where it's black people leading black people, it is controlled by the white power structure.
When you put all that together, there's a clear picture of what's actually going on. The movement is not about the betterment of black people, just like it wasn't with Rebels Caton, just like it wasn't with Manning Johnson. The movement is about overthrowing the government, overthrowing and bringing down capitalism and ushering in the Marxian ideology of socialism and communism. That's what it's all actually about, and they're just using blacks and racial tension the same way Manning Johnson was using it.
But again, I ask, if Black Lives Matter Global Network is a communist organization, what does that mean for black people if the Democrats and liberals fund and support them? That means the goal for the liberals and the Democrats and Black Lives Matter Global Network is for us to be in bondage. I'm not talking about mental slavery. I'm talking about physical bondage. I imagine in the future we'll be chipped. If you ever watch the movie Hunger Games, you can see Hunger Games predicts how the future is going to be. And just go to District 11. District 11 is our district. And look how it's set up. The outside of the district looks like a prison complex. And inside, they're in there picking cotton, doing agriculture. They're in there basically prisoners and slaves at the exact same time. And I honestly see that as the fate for us, because in 30 years, we'll have zero wealth. And with zero wealth, what can we do? With zero wealth, what can we do? Absolutely nothing.
While many believe that the secret cells of the Red Army simply dissipated after the era of McCarthyism during the 40s and 50s, what we see today paints a different story. A story that demonstrates that even the remnants of the Red Army have never been completely swept away. What is even more fascinating is how the need for the black man or woman to keep the agenda alive is astonishingly similar to today. Manning said it best.
Deep in the swamp of inferiority, lack of ability, muddled thought, the Negro intelligentsia looks to the phony white liberals, politicians, and progressive hypocrites for leadership, guidance, and money.
So if we understand economics, then we should understand that zero wealth as a people is slavery. And to top it off, to add to all this information about Black Lives Matter Global Network being a communist organization, we have BLM working with the Black Future Labs program, actually working with the Chinese Progressive Association. So everything links Black Lives Matter Global Network to being a communist organization. And this is an organization that is funded and endorsed by the Democrats and the liberals. And communism doesn't work. Socialism doesn't work. Marxism, which is communism, doesn't work. None of this stuff works. It does not work because the people at the top still are rich. The people at the top still have all the money. It's just everybody else on the bottom's on the same level. It's still oppression, it's still bondage. It's just a nice way of being enslaved.
State-run media has again seemingly given Joe Biden yet another de facto endorsement. They ran an op-ed this weekend.
It's a de facto, it's a glowing in-your-face endorsement.
Yes, and they say that, quote, Biden's worldview runs parallel to Beijing's. They talk about how if Biden is, quote, truly determined to reconcile with Beijing, nothing should stop him from coming to the negotiating table. And they draw many distinctions between Joe Biden's negotiating tactics and that of Donald Trump's.
Beijing says Biden will be, quote-unquote, smoother to deal with. Well, Chinese President Xi Jinping has not said this. His mouthpiece, the Global Times, has. It ran a 1,200-word article backing Biden's campaign. His views are in line with Xi Jinping's. This is what Yang had to say on Biden. First, that the United States will be more predictable under Joe Biden.
Its leaders, many of its leaders are members of Left Root. Left Root is an organization of the hard left, in which a lot of people, the Chinese Progressive Association of Boston, its leaders are also members of Left Root. And I think that's where the ideological overlap is with Alicia Garza and the Black Lives Matter organization, because Alicia Garza is a Marxist, has said that she needs to smash capitalism, has said this several times. I just viewed a video this morning of the two other founders, Opal Tometi and Patrice Couleurs, chanting, we have nothing to lose but our chains, which is obviously straight out of the Communist Manifesto.
Wait for it, free blacks, get money, go.